Now notice something, if I click on menu and then I, let's say, go to education, look what happens. Education goes up underneath my nav bar. We don't want that. We want it to at least start down here every time. The way to do that is for this div to have a top padding. You can't give it a top margin. That's not going to work. And the reason, see, here was the top margin. You might go, well, why didn't it push it down away from that nav bar? Well, the reason it doesn't is, remember that this nav bar is, it has a position of fixed. Remember, anything that's fixed or absolute gets pulled out of the document flow so that it doesn't interact with other elements inside the page and their margins. So what we have to do is then instead come down here and put a padding on there. So let's say that we want to, I'm just going to paste it, put a padding top, and I put a little comment out here to remind myself that this is to ensure that those H1s clear the persistent nav bar at the top. And instead of making them 3em is the actual height of that nav bar. We want to give it a little extra space, so we'll make it 4em. We'll save that, and let's just look at it. Hit refresh, and now what's going to happen is if I go to, like, say, skills or something, every time now it's going to be at 1em below where that nav bar would be. Okay, experience, it's working, and let's go down to contact. And that's, contact doesn't do it because it's at the end of the page, so, but it's doing what it's supposed to do. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and also look at this article, and it seems like it's really close to the header, you know, the H1 and H2 that's inside the header. So I'm going to use my inspector, and I'm going to play around and see with how much wiggle room I have to make modifications. So I'm going to add a new temporary style. And I'm going to be more specific than just saying article. I'm going to say that it's any article inside the page content. And I'm going to give it a margin, say margin top, maybe, of, let's try 1em. And that already looks better. Now, one of the things that I think I'd also like to do is I'd like to have some kind of visual break after the H1, or more specifically, maybe at the top of the header. And I can do that by having a background image that's behind this header that's sort of assigned to being at the top of it, and I can provide some padding and stuff. So let me show you the header that excuse, not the header, but the break image that I want to use. I already made this. I'm not going to go into how to make it right now, but I might do a different demo that's separate. So if you want to watch it, you can. But this is what it looks like. It's very subtle. It's just a line that basically I applied a drop shadow to, and then I used a very heavy, like high level feather on an elliptical selection, and I did a mask so that it sort of fades into nothing at the edges, and it sort of does it in an oval shaped way. I think that'll be a nice touch. So yeah, I already put that in my images folder for my exercise, so now I can actually use it, and I can use this one as well instead of committing to it and make sure it looks okay. And here, let's add that again. Now I'm going to just paste something there, and so you don't have to watch me type. And basically what it is, I'm saying background, and I want to add that URL, and I'm telling it don't repeat, and make it anchored to the top and center it horizontally. And you'll see, you can kind of see it there. It is a little bit hard to see, but it's sitting literally at the top of the article. So what I need to do is I need to give the article a padding on the top that I know is at least the height of that picture. So if I do it at least of the original height of the picture, then I should be okay. So if I say padding top, and I know that the picture is 30 pixels tall, then there, it looks a little bit better. And if I feel like this is a little bit too heavy-handed, say for you know, this scale of page, the other thing I can do is I can give that background image a background size. And something like this would be, of course, your discretion. But I'm going to say background size, and I'm going to tell it to be 60%. And you see it gets a little bit smaller, so that's pretty nice looking. And if I decide that I want to use all of this, I can go over to Inspector Style Sheet, and I can copy all of this. It's just a reminder, you should know how to do this. To come down and into my CSS, I can add that rule after my div for the page content. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and save that so that this article will now take that styling, and if I go and I preview it, I should be able to click here and click maybe profile or something. It jumps to the right place and I've got the spacing that I want, and so far so good. All right, now one of the things that you might notice though is that if I scroll up, because I have like a 3M margin, this is too serious of a gap. It's too big. So I think that I need to make a special rule for the profile. Let's go back to our CSS, and all right, so this is where the page content rules are. So down below, I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a comment here that's the special profile rules, and I'm going to tell it, actually, I'm going to copy, oops, not that. I'm going to copy this real quick, and I'm going to paste that, except that I'm not going to just leave it as section page content. I'm going to say section, well, let's try, instead of this, let's try profile. So, because we're not going to do it to every page content, we're just going to do it to the profile div. And we're going to tell it to have a margin top of 0. Let's see what that does for us. And that's a lot better. That's not nearly as big as it was before. So it looks a lot more professional. This is okay because you're going to have quite a separation between the sections. I think that's fine. But this becomes a lot more visually evident. And something else that I want to go ahead and take care of too, if you look at this, is in my skills section. You know, you can leave it as a list. I think that this is a pretty ugly list. I would make it a little bit nicer no matter what you do somehow, even if it is the description or whatever. But one of the things that I think it's a really nice feature on a lot of resumes nowadays is that people will put icons for some of the things that they know how to do. And you can even go so far as to make them into like graph looking things, like with, you know, pie charts or whatever, you know, bar graphs, whatever is the thing that would actually make sense to describe it. But I'm just going to do some simple icons, and actually I've already done them. I'm not going to have you watch me do this. We've already talked about how to do an SVG, so I'm just going to go into my images folder here, and I'm going to paste a group of SVGs that I've already created. And to give you some idea, you know, like this one would be for Illustrator, CSS, HTML, JS, PS, yeah, and so forth, okay? Oops, I don't need that one. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to go back into my HTML and I need to place those in the skills section. So if I scroll, here it is. So here are like the things that say HTML and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make an image tag, and we'll have the src equals something, and then we'll have our alt equal, go ahead and use that, I suppose. It's already there, the HTML5, so I put my alt quotations around it. And then it's located in my images folder, so I'm going to make it images, and I happen to know that the file name is html5.svg. Okay, now what I can do, oh, this is not art, it's supposed to say alt. What I can do if I wanted to is I can copy all of this. Just to be succinct, I'm going to copy it and paste, and I'm going to just change parts and pieces of it. It's going to look incorrect for just a minute. The color coding is going to be all off until I complete it. I'm going to copy the ending quotation mark and the end bracket and paste these at the end like this. And the other thing I need to do is I need to change these. They're not all going to be HTML5. This one is CSS, for instance. This one is just JS. This one would be PHP. This one is, I think I called it Photoshop. find out. And then this one is, I called that one AI, I'm pretty sure. So we can go ahead and preview it really quick. Let me save it. And let's make sure that the pictures are actually showing up like we expect. So we can jump to skills, and they are showing up. They're gigantic, but they are showing up, okay? So what I want to do, and the reason they're that big is because an SVG is going to be as big as it can be. It's scalable, so it's going to take up the space. So what I want to do is I want to make these so that they don't look so ridiculously huge. And I'm going to put some styles in here. I'm going to make some CSS. I'm just going to paste this right here for right now. And I notice that I put special skills rules as a comment. It's important. Keep that all clear. And first of all, I'm going to go ahead and tell the UL that's inside of the skills section to be a maximum of basically 60, well, not maximum, but a width of 60%. And I'm going to give it top and bottom margins of 1em and auto left and right. And padding again is going to be top and bottom 1em so that they'll have some space. Let's go ahead and save that and let's see how it looks. We can jump to the skills section, and that's a lot better. It's still not what I want, but it's a lot better. I think that for mobile view, since that's what we're focusing on first, remember mobile first, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have these be in 2 columns. All right, so it would be HTML, CSS, and then the next row would be JS, PHP, and then the third row would be PS and AI. So let's work on building some more CSS. Okay, so, oops, I'm going to paste it again. And what I'm going to do here is show you that we've got a list item rule where we have it set to float left, and instead of having the width be 100% or 50% or something like that, we're going to do 40 with a padding of 5%. Now, if we do a width of 40%, that means, right, we have 2 columns, so 40 plus 40 is 80. That means we have 20 left over. And remember, each column is going to have left and right, left and right. So left and right is 4. 4 times 5% is that remainder 20%. So 80 plus 20. That equals something that's going to be 100%. That's good. And then I want to go ahead and also make an image rule. And part of the reason I'm doing this is that, like, well, with an SVG, a lot of times they're going to scale anyway, but if you had regular images, you would definitely need to do this. So you'd need to tell it to be display block. So any image that's inside of that list item would be display block, tell it to be 100%, and tell them to have auto margins, okay? So I'm going to save that, and let's take a peek, see how that's behaving. And so these are sort of a more manageable scale, so that's not too bad. Now look what's happening. Looks like it's wanting to still float a little bit in some spots. It's kind of jumping. That's annoying. Now, one of the things that we need to do also that I forgot to do, aside from we need to make sure that these clear each other, is that we also want to go up here to the UL, and we want to make sure that nothing weird happens inside of that UL because we have floats inside of it. Let's go ahead and tell it to have an overflow of hidden. Remember, anytime a parent has floated children, overflow hidden is a good instinct. So let's go back and refresh. And you see that fixed our problem right there. All right, just having the overflow hidden sort of fixed our problem. If for some reason you test it in other browsers and you still see that it's wanting to pull the next heading level or the next section up next to it, then what you can do is you can tell page content. We can tell each section dot page dash content, and not the div, but the whole thing. We can tell it to clear both, and then that way it'll always clear any floats, since we don't want those things to be floating. So now just refresh it and it still looks okay, but it might actually help it in other browsers. And these get really big on a big screen. I'm going to have it go smaller, but I don't want to deal with my media queries just yet. I'll do that towards the end whenever I can deal with a bunch of stuff that I haven't dealt with yet.